Hi everyone, welcome back to Life Technologies YouTube channel, and thank you so much for watching and supporting our content. So this is a continuation of our Huawei switch configuration series, and in this episode we'll be demonstrating how to implement port security on Huawei switches. So port security is a very common networking feature. It helps us to control access to ports on a switch. So we know that switches always have many ports, and these ports could be connected to end user devices like the PC, the laptops, or even the printers, the DHCP servers, or any other server or equipment that could require a cable connection to the switch. So one thing that you need to consider is the network security. So when you have many devices, you have many ports, and these devices are connected to the switch, you need to consider the security aspect of the network. You cannot just leave all the ports to be connecting to any device that comes in. So that is why we need to implement port security that will help us to ensure that only authorized devices will have access to the ports on the switch. So you can see that in this setup you have switch 1 that is connecting to the internet, and then we have switch 2 that is connecting to customer or the user equipment. So we have PC1, PC2, PC3, PC4, and PC5. All these devices require a cable connection to the switch. So if you don't implement port security on this device, it means any user coming in with that device could plug in to the switch on any port, and then they will have access to the internet or any other resources available on your local area networks. But with port security, what we are doing is we will be binding the MAC address of this PC to this port on Ethernet 001, and no any other device will be allowed to connect on this port. If they connect, unless you've configured the or increase the number of MAC addresses that can be learned from that interface. But if you don't do so, then only the MAC address of PC5 will be allowed to communicate through this Ethernet 001. Same to PC1. PC1, the MAC address will be bind to this port, and only PC1 can connect to this port. So this is what we'll be demonstrating in this episode. And before we go into the lab, just a reminder that if you are yet to subscribe to our channel, kindly hit that subscribe button to support us and also to stay tuned in for more upcoming videos. So I have the lab setup ready. This is the lab setup. I will open the two switches. I've already configured the PCs with the right IP address, the mask, and the gateway. So what we just need to do is to configure the switches. So I will start by configuring switch 1. Let me start with switch 1. So on switch 1, the configurations are very simple. The same way we did last time. We just need to configure trunk port. We need to create a VLAN if, and once we've done that, we can go ahead and so let me move this one. So the first thing that we need to do is to create VLAN 100. Create, and then I will create an interface VLAN if 100, assign IP address of 100.100.100.254, mask is 24. Then we'll go ahead and configure the trunk port. So interface Ethernet 0/0/1, port link type trunk, and then port trunk allow pass VLAN 100. So that is it for the switch. For switch 2, undo terminal monitor so that it doesn't disrupt us. And then we need to create VLAN 100. Create. Once you've created the VLAN, we just need to, first we'll do the basic configuration. We need to configure it as an access port and bind the VLAN. So we'll start by interface Ethernet 0/0/1, port link type, it will be access, and then port default VLAN will be 100. So if I display this, these are the configurations. If we go on this PC.5 and we try to ping 100.100.254, let's check this. These are the basic configs. 100.100.5, the gateway is .254. Okay, I have forgotten to configure this port, so I will do the configuration for the trunk port first. 0/0/6. Port link type will be trunk, and we need port trunk allow pass VLAN 100. Now it should be good. Go back to the command prompt, and you can see that we are able to ping from PC5 to the gateway, which is 100.100.100.254. So the next thing that we need to do is to now implement port security. So with port security, we'll configure this port. And when we implement port security, some of the things that we do is we allow sticky MAC addresses. So any MAC address that is learned from this port, it will be now a sticky MAC address and not a dynamic. And once it has been learned, no other MAC address will be learned unless we do increase the maximum number of the MAC addresses that can be learned from this interface. By default, it will be one. Only one MAC address can be learned from this interface, but you can change it to the number that you want. So if I do the configurations on this interface, we need to do port security enable. This is the command that you use to configure port security on the interface. Once we've configured the port security enable, we can port security MAC address sticky. So this one makes the MAC addresses to be sticky. Once it has been learned, it will be sticky. It will not be dynamic anymore. And then we need to go ahead and maybe we need to configure the maximum number of MAC addresses that can be learned on this interface. But in this case, we just leave it to the default, which is 1. So if I display this, you can see that we have the port security enable command, we have the port security MAC address sticky. You have other parameters that you can configure, but for this lab demonstration, we'll only enable the port security and just the basic configurations for the port security. So this is gig 006. We are configuring it in a wrong port. And do port security. We need to configure on gig Ethernet 001. Remember, this is an uplink port. It will definitely have multiple MAC addresses. And do port security MAC address sticky. Then I will delete this command, enable. That is okay. I will go ahead and configure the interface Ethernet 0/0/1 port security enable, port security MAC address sticky. So quit. We'll go ahead and configure the other interfaces, and then we can do a demonstration. 0/0/1 port link type access, port default VLAN, we set it to 100. Then we'll do port security enable, port security MAC address sticky. So I'll do display these. We can copy these configurations and apply on the other ports. So interface Ethernet 0/0/2. These are the configs. Interface Ethernet 0/0/3. We do the same. We also have 4 and 5. So we do similar configurations. And then finally 5. Display current configurations. So you have the configuration. This is how you configure. We have the port link type set to access. Port default VLAN is 100. Port security enable. Port security MAC address sticky. And now if we try to ping from this PC, we should also be able to ping the gateway 100.100.100.254. You can see that we can reach it. On PC2, we also expect the same, ping 100.100.100.254. We can be able to ping. So once you've done these configurations, let me see whether we have a command for port security. We don't have a command for port security, but our configurations are okay. So we've set the maximum number of MAC addresses that can be learned to be 1. The default is 1. So what happens when we change these connections? For example, if I were to delete these 2 connections and go ahead to this PC1 connects to this port, this PC5 connects to, so I've swapped the connections. PC1 was connecting to 002, PC2, PC5 was connecting to 001. Now that I've swapped the connection, we don't expect that we'll have communication from PC5 to the gateway or PC1 to the gateway. Because remember, we can only learn one MAC address from these connections. So if I do a ping, you can see that the request is timing out. On PC5, if I do a ping, you can also see that the request is also timing out. One thing that we can do is we can increase the number of the static MAC address that can be learned on an interface. So if I do Ethernet 0/0/1, can set port security. The command is max MAC number, and you can see that it's learning from 1 to 4096. I can set it to 2. And now 001 has been set to 2. If I try to ping, I should be able to, because we've set the MAC address to 2. You can set it to any number that you want. You can set it to 5, and it will take some time to synchronize. You can set it to 100. But remember, you should set it to the lowest number, especially if you can make it 1, it will be more secure, especially if this connection is kind of maybe for a VIP or the CEO, then you minimize the number of connections that can be done on that port. So PC1, let's try again. PC1 is connecting to 001. We've set the, let's do the same on Ethernet. Interface Ethernet 0/0/2. We'll also set the port security max number to 5 or to 2 and try to ping. It will take some time to clear the MAC address table. Let's see. On PC1, still not going through because it's still taking time to clear. Display ARP all. So you've learned these MAC addresses from 1 and 2. 1 and 2, which is 1, which is 2. We are yet to. Let's try again. Destination still not reachable. Let me try to shut down this interface and see. Interface Ethernet 0/0/1. Shut down. Undo shutdown. On PC1. Still request timeout. Just check on PC5. Still request timeout. Let's verify our configurations again. Display this. This is switch 2. Port security, MAC address sticky. So it's just taking time to refresh the MAC address table, but finally it will be cleared. So we'll give it time, but you can see the configuration. So for us to be able to enable port security, you need to run the command port security enable, and then you need to run the other command for port security. If you want to increase the number of the MAC address that can be learned through this interface, the default is always 1, but you can set it to a higher value. And then you also need to enable the port security MAC address sticky. So these two commands cannot be configured unless you've configured port security enable command. So this is how simple it is to enable port security on Huawei switches. Let's see whether the MAC address table has refreshed. Not yet. So we'll still give it time, but it will take time to clear the MAC address table, the cache from the switch, and then it will now start to accept the new MAC addresses learned on the interfaces. But from the other switches, you can see that we are able to ping. If we check 003, we have also configured port security. Display current configuration. Port 3, it's also configured with port security. Only one MAC address is allowed on that port. If I display current configuration, let me use this command. So if I do interface Ethernet 0/0/1, no, I need /3 and display this include default. These are very useful command. You can see that we have here, we have the port security MAC number is set to 1. So this is the default value. So you may not see it on the current configurations, but if you display the default configuration, you can see that it's configured. And if you increase the number of MAC addresses that can be learned on this interface, we'll also find this command the same way we have seen it on the other interfaces. Display current configuration, you can see that we've increased the port security max number to 5. This one we have also set it to 5 for the other interface. So I hope you understand how to implement port security on Huawei switches. It's a feature that you should use in your network if you need to improve on the network security. So I hope you've enjoyed the session, and I hope to see you in our next episode. And just a kind reminder that if you've watched this video and you are yet to subscribe to our channel, kindly hit that subscribe button and stay tuned in for more upcoming videos. Thank you and see you in our next episode. Bye.